Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast with Dean and Kate. My name is Kate Semmens, and I'm joined here with my lovely co-host, Mr. Dean Nixon.
Lovely co-host. I love that.
You are quite lovely, sir. I have to say it because whenever you're introing us, you always say the lovely Kate Semmens.
You're right. That's fair.
So it's just a 50-50 thing here. We're joining you from beautiful St. George, Utah, and every week we try to get on here and create a podcast that will expand your horizon. Just as always, we love to remind you, dear listener, that the information we're bringing to you comes from our own life experience. It's the thoughts and feelings of our heart. It's oftentimes our own opinion, and that's why we like it, because we get to get on these mics and tell you things that we think and feel coming from our own life, as well as being neck deep in the the behavioral health world. That slipped right out of my mind for a second there, but both Dean and I have created our career out of working in social work and with people in crisis. And I know you've created a number of different treatment centers for youth, residential treatment centers. I've been in day treatment programs with youth, and we've both worked in crisis. And now here we are, life coaching.
Yes.
And that's what brings us together today.
Princess Bride.
That's right. And so, as always, we really encourage you to take what we have to say and go out and research it for yourself and put some thinking and some heart into it and see what resonates for you. But it's always one of our goals to start stripping away misconceptions of the minds or things that aren't really true, that oftentimes we get presented on this planet as humans as being truth, that it's not true.
Yep.
And many of the topics that we bring to you, we work with people every day on, because they are kind of like earth-shattering experiences. It's traumatic when you have, as like I like to call it, the glass ceiling shattered, or you like to call it when holes start to get ripped through that fabric.
Yep.
And that's our purpose being here to have this conversation with you, is to start to do some of that in a gentle way, hopefully.
Yeah.
And a fun way.
And maybe not so gentle at times.
Yeah, sure.
We've been a little bold at times.
Well, being bold is fantastic.
I love it.
But inevitably, we're always going to bring in content to help you begin to create more of a sure and sturdy foundation.
Right.
That's another one of our goals.
Yes. Well, in today's topic, that's as we're finishing up. So we've talked about it in other podcasts. Is we finish up our webisode that we do every Monday night on
Monday
Facebook,
Night Live.
Instagram, and YouTube. Monday Night Live.
You do it so much better.
And so we come right into this, and so we start throwing into this topic, and that's what's great about this platform is we've got more time, and we have the ability to flesh things out. Well, tonight's topic is really one along, really aligning itself with this idea of the misconceptions of the mind. Mm-hmm. And it's the idea that your life is based upon how you want your life to be. And so what I propose is that your life is more than that. And so, I'm always starting out with our hypothesis.
I love it.
We're going to throw it out there, and then we're going to either debunk it or support it. And usually it's a debunking. Today we'll see where we go with it. But it's this idea that you think you're who you are based upon who you want to be, rather than based upon who you think you should be or who you don't want to become. Mm-hmm. And that's the part where we really need to kind of dive into tonight. Mm-hmm. And the reason we do these, as Kate was alluding earlier, is we're dealing with people all the time, and we've been dealing with people for years. Mm-hmm. And the people that we deal with in crisis, what really...
I love that you're using the word deal. It's my favorite right now. We just deal with people. That's what we do.
We deal with people.
I know. It's just funny.
I don't know where that's coming. I can't tell. She's being facetious.
No, I just like that you use the word deal.
It's deal. You're dealing with these people. And when they're in crisis, this is when you really see what people really think and how they really perceive the world. Because when you're in crisis, you let everything else go and you hang on to that one thing you're obsessing over. And so, when it's adults that we're dealing with, it's that obsession over the loss of a partner via either death or infidelity, or, other means. It's if it's a youth that's maybe in a treatment setting or being pulled from their homes that we've dealt with. It's that I want to be free. I want to get out of here. I want to get away. So we get fixated on this thought, this thing. And everything, what's so interesting to me, and you've probably found the same, is that you can take that one facet, that one thing that person is fixated on. And as you start to unravel that one thing, it unravels the rest of their belief system.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Well, I think, too, it's because, it's that fight or flight response, and in crisis, everything is so escalated and so sensitive and just touchy. Like, it's a live wire, right? Like, it is a spark ready to blow any second.
It's an exposed nerve.
Exactly. And so there's not much time to, really think about, how should I be responding to this? What's most appropriate at the moment? What outcome do I want to create? And so I love where you're going with this, because it's raw, it's fresh, it's real, and I would agree 100% that you can just really start to unravel, as you said, really the whole belief system,
the whole what it's all based upon. And that's where the hypothesis to tonight's topic really comes in. Is we're dealing with, where is your identity? And we find it, what I find is that people's identity is in one of four places. Their identity is based upon who they think they should be, or their identity is based upon who other people think they should be, or their identity is based upon who they don't want to be or who they shouldn't be.
Right.
Or their identity is based upon what they truly believe and what they love. And out of those four, we want the latter.
Yeah, of course, that's ideal. That's the most authentic representation.
But the majority of the people, especially in crises, are fixated on the first three. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I would just put that blanket statement as the majority of people live in those first three, regardless of your state of crisis, but definitely heightens that in that state of crisis 100%.
Right. And so we're watching this idea of how you want your life to play out. And so this is where the misconception of the mind is that people think, and that's what's so interesting to me is how much, and in working with youth, I think that's where I saw it play out the most. I'd watch these youth that we'd pick them up and we'd bring them into the treatment centers, and the majority of them, like 80 to 85% of the time, was against their will. They don't want to be there.
Certainly.
We did have a good percentage that were self-admits or kids that were like, yeah, I need help. But the majority of them don't want to be there. But what was so intriguing to me was you bring these young men and women into a treatment setting. And the first thing that would always do is we take away the social connections. So any cell phones, any connection to the external world, gone.
Right.
The next thing that we do is we would change their clothing so that everybody in the facility's in the same clothing.
Which for kids, I mean, that's a huge thing, right?
That's everything.
That's everything. Yeah.
And that was the thing is even piercings come out. And I'll never forget the young kid we picked up out here in the southwestern part of the U.S. And he came in and he had, I think he had like at least 10 earrings in each ear, like starting at the top and the cartilage all the way down to the lobes. And then he had each of this part of the ear. I can't remember what that's called.
The little bump in the middle on your actual head.
Yeah. Like no,
I don't know what it's called either.
But he had that pierced. He had the bridge of his nose pierced. He had his eyebrows pierced. He had his tongue pierced. He had his lips pierced. He had his nipples pierced, and I won't go on. There was more. But, it took almost 20 minutes just to remove all the piercings. And, we put them in an envelope, seal it, and it's just jingling. It's like change. There's so much in there. A lot of hardware. But there's this identity that's there. And there's this belief. And the funny part about it is that all of that connection for these young men and women is not based necessarily on what they liked. Some of it was. A very small percentage of how they dressed and what they were hanging on to was their liking.
Right, like their real authentic self.
And the way that I knew was that when they would leave the facility about 8 to 10 months later, they didn't want any of the stuff they came with.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy? Very small percentage wanted all that stuff back. Very small percentage wanted the gauging back in. Very small percentage. Because in that facility, they're learning what it is that they like. Yeah. They're learning who they are. They're learning and connecting to that self and who they really want to become. But when they start to look at the trappings of who they were, they're like, I don't want that stuff back. And anybody listening, if you don't believe me, then go back to your about 5 years ago and look at pictures and ask yourself if you'd put those clothes back on.
So, listen, I know some people out there, though, who hang on to their stuff and just wait for the fashion to recycle.
That's different. Right? That's totally different. I'm that guy.
I know you are.
I figured it out. I got jeans up in my closet. I'm waiting for the baggy pants to come back. I'm like, I am not spending another dime on jeans. I'll wait till they come back. The baggies will be back, But it's that idea that all of that identity is wrapped up in that view of who you think you should be, or the idea of who other people have told you. And this one's interesting. So the idea of who you should be is wrapped up in this looking out at the world and going, well, I should look like this or I should look like that, and these kids are wearing this, and mom and dad said I should be this, and siblings and et cetera.
Social media. Yeah.
Then you get the who other people tell you should be. And that's where we get into our relationships. This is where people are telling you, oh, I like it when you wear that. I like it when you do that. I like it when you say that. I like it when you do,
Dean, I really like that you bring up this part, because I think so often when I've heard others talk about this topic, or just that kind of concept of who others tell you that you should be, it feels really aggressive, right? Like, oh, you should blah, blah, blah. Like a lecture. I just imagine myself sitting on my couch and my dad being like, rah, 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 and just like coming at me with a lecture. But that's not the way that's formed. It's exactly like what you're talking about. It's those subtle layers of validation and praise over something. Yes. And so then you adopt that as what it is that you should be doing in order to be able to hook into that, right?
Yep.
And then you make decisions from that place. It's not like always, oh, you should go to law school and blah, blah. Like, no. It comes, all of these come in more subtle layering than those giant experiences that often people do have, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, you can't wear that, or you shouldn't wear that. You're going to go to hell, and blah, blah, blah. Only sluts wear that, and all that kind of stuff, right? No, that's
a piece of it.
That's a piece of it, right? But I think that the more subtle one, and by the way, listener, where we're taking this is for you to be able to start looking at all the places in your life that are subtly writing your script for you that you aren't even aware of.
Yes.
So, but I love that you brought that up right at the front here, just that those.
Well, and it reminds me of this young man. We had this young guy come in, and we're talking like 90. I want to say 98, maybe. A young kid comes in and he's wearing purple, and this was like pre-yoga pants, but they were like that. They were like a purple
like a
yoga spandex, but the crotch was dropped to about mid-thigh. So
like a tight MC Hammer pant?
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oh, Hammer time.
Oh, Hammer time. Yeah, it was kind of like that, like MC Hammer pants, but mid-thigh, crotch dropped down.
Like MC Hammer meets Prince.
Right.
I've got it.
I've got
the
image.
image.
And actually, it's funny is they were purple, but they weren't sagged. It was waist high.
Right.
So it's waist high, dropped really crotch. These pants, and the mother is just like I cannot get him to stop wearing those. He's got 3 pairs. I'm like, really? And like he starts coming in, and I'm just looking at the pants, and I'm thinking, he does not like those. He does not like what he's wearing. So I start talking to him about like, hey, you know, we're going to take these clothes, we're going to put them in, you get them back when you get them back, and da-da-da. And he was freaking out about where they were going to go and how he could control, you know, make sure he gets them back, etc. Well, it turns out it was a girl.
Oh.
He got a compliment from a girl, not his girlfriend, just a girl at school, that one day he wore them to school kind of as a joke, but that girl validated it. And from there forward, he would never wear any other pants to school for months.
Yeah.
And he went out and bought more of them.
Right.
So this is what we're talking about, is this idea of praise.
Yes.
You get that one person compliments. Yeah, I like that. Okay, I'm going to buy 7 of these and I'm going to wear them and et cetera, et cetera. And I get it. I'm a person that's a little bit different. Like if I get a tank top or a shirt or something I like, I'll buy 7 of them because I like them.
Well, and let's be honest, Dean, you buy 7 of them because then you don't have to think.
You don't.
When you're picking out an outfit.
You don't. You just grab it. You're like, yeah, it looks good. I know it does. I like it.
Nobody.
I like it. But it's the difference between, am I wearing it because I like it, or am I wearing it because somebody's told me this is who I should be or who I should look like?
Right.
Then we get into that third category. And the third category.
Before we jump into the third category, I just had a thought that came up on that, and just how powerful that is, right? Like, so often we kind of dismiss that kind of stuff, but once again, it runs subconsciously in the back of our mind, and you may not be aware that when you're going to Target or Ross or wherever you're doing your shopping, that somewhere way back in your head, you've got those layers of, oh well, I'm going to buy this, you know, like and then you get it, and then like you're saying, like I have lots of stuff in my closet that I'm like, I hate this now. Like, what on earth is happening? But I probably could take it back to different times, especially because my love language, one of them is words of affirmation. So if you couple that onto places that you're particularly maybe a little bit more susceptible to having that script start to be written, I totally can identify with that young man who got a compliment on something and then was like, oh man, if she thought I looked good in that, then I must look good in that. And I want to feel validated and loved, so I'm going to wear that thing more often. Right. And he's not consciously thinking that. It's all running in his script.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I remember being, a teen, back when I was a teen, I don't know, about 15, I used to part my hair in the middle. It's coming back in style now, which is hilarious to me. But I used to part my hair right down the middle, and my cousin came up from California one summer, and she told me, she's like, that was like 2 years ago. We don't wear our hair like that anymore. Oh. And I changed I put it back. I started parting on the side again because it was who. So it's either a compliment, or it's somebody telling you, that you don't look good. But either way, it's not based upon you. It's based upon what other people are telling you should be.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's pretty it stands worth mentioning that we're particularly susceptible to this when we're young.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
Like if someone would have come up to you yesterday and have been like, oh my gosh, Dean, your hairstyle is so 2 years ago, you would be like, kiss it. I don't care, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just got my barber to do this.
I just barely got this haircut. Leave me alone.
Right? But your 15-year-old self changed.
I changed it in a minute.
Just changed it.
Yes. And we are more susceptible. And a lot of those beliefs, and like you said, and that's one of the things I want listeners to be thinking about is, and it's one thing we have to keep retracing, is always important for us to be reflecting back at why am I doing what I'm doing? And if you're doing it because you like it, then keep doing it. But if you retrace it back and you go, well, I'm doing this because somebody told me it looked good, or if somebody told me this is who I should be, or if somebody told me this is what I should eat, or if somebody told me that this is how I should speak, act, or, what I should watch, then you might want to rethink and go, well, wait a minute, is that really me?
Yeah.
Is that really who I am? And you, like you said, you go to the store, you'll buy things, and you have prejudice and preferences, and we're always talking about on podcasts,
right?
That you have towards certain clothes and certain colors and certain things. Where did that come from? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, and you shouldn't do that. Do
Right.
But at least
Sure.
take a moment as you're pulling it off the rack and go, why?
Yeah. And I think particularly too, when you have times in your life where you're really struggling with you. I know for me, sometimes I can like start, I call it my downward spiral. I know we've gone over this before, right? Like you just kind of start checking yourself down and down and down and getting more depressed or more angry or more sad or self-loathing or whatever that looks like, right? Like to me, those places that might be particularly lit up, like flashing to, hey, come over here and take a look, is if they really don't bring you like a solid state of like who you are, like if it's not a very grounded thing, right? Like if it's kind of like maybe there's some energy around it, either good, like too good, or going down the other direction. But for me, that's oftentimes where I can like maybe start to see that I need to take a look at it, right? Because when life is just chill and normal and good, you're just going to be chill, normal, and good, right?
Right.
So we're like, hey, listener, start to take a look at these places. And really the time to take a look at it is when you start to go down your downward spiral, right? Like, okay, why do I keep falling back into these things? What really belongs to me? And really, why is it that I do what I do?
Yeah.
So, wow, that was a tiny little tangent. But
It was a good tangent. It's a good tangent. And that's where the third category is, where we're reacting.
Right.
Where it's, I don't want to be.
Right.
And I think a lot of people get to this one in their 20s, early 20s, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, and even into our 30s to some degree, where we start looking and going, well, I don't want to be like that. Or I don't want to look like that. Or I don't want to feel that again. And so we start changing who we are based upon who we don't want to be.
Right.
And so we start looking, and I see this one happen a lot with family. And, I don't want to be like my mother, or I don't want to be like my dad, or I don't want to be like my brother. And so we start looking at the attributes of those individuals, and we start to try and shape our lives away from that. And that really starts to be a really devastating thing.
Right.
And in some ways it can work. In some ways it can be a healthy thing. And in some ways, it can be a very, very detrimental, unhealthy thing. And so that's where I think a lot of it has to do with what it is that you're choosing not to be and why.
Yes. I think
if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think the why is that really big, huge piece in that, right? And I think, too, talking just like once again about why we have these conversations, it's in those moments. I love that you say it's like through your 20s and your 30s, because it's in those years that you have a lot of glass shattering moments, right?
Yes.
When things that are supposed to work out a certain way don't, because it's not real, it's not true, it's an illusion or a misconception of the mind, right? And so then it's like this huge, just giant flip, instead of taking the time and really sinking into what it is that you want, right? Instead of just like, I don't want that, boom, I'm going to do exactly a 180. Like I'm going to get as far away from that as I possibly can.
Right.
Instead of like, okay, this, purple MC Hammer Prince pants. They aren't really working for me. I don't really, what would I like, instead of like, boom, now I'm just only going to wear bell-bottom jeans, right? Or whatever that looks like. Tried to pull it back into that analogy.
And I've got them in my closet.
Kind of belly flopped, I think.
No, you're good. I got them in my closet. Swing by, I'll give you a pair.
But that would be the 180 where, or maybe like the big cool hippie float, like something just so not form-fitting, right? Like the
so
180
you're trying to extreme,
exactly,
go from
like,
one extreme to another.
I don't want that anymore. Boom, I'm going to do something in the whole 180 of that, instead of like, okay, great. I just discovered that I've been wearing these pants because I got a compliment. Awesome. Cool that chick liked my pants. What do I want to wear?
Right.
What's my fun little personal style, unattached to anyone or anybody else?
Yeah.
Right? And we're talking about fashion here, but hopefully, listener, you're understanding that this is
more than fashion.
Lot deeper than fashion.
A lot deeper. And that's, when we look at that and we say, like, especially with parents, I hear it and see it a lot with kids and be like, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like my mom. And here's where we run into trouble, people, because what you focus on is what you become. So if you're sitting back there going, well, I don't want to be like that, the problem is you become like that because it's what you're trying to avoid, and you fixate on it and you attract it. In other words, you don't attract it to you like some weird scientific thing. It's like you start to take on those attributes and those behaviors. So one of the tricks that I've learned is, instead of focusing on what you don't want to be like with that person, you focus on the things that you do like about that person and stop saying, I don't want to be like them. You just start focusing on the attributes and qualities that are really healthy and working. And then it changes the energy, if that makes sense. So you're not
100%.
reacting.
Well, and it's so much more power. Like, it comes from a place of personal power in what you're choosing to create for you, instead of what you don't want.
Right.
Absolutely.
Which is a big thing that we do. And because we are comfort seekers, because we don't want to be uncomfortable, we will spend more time trying to stay in that comfortable place and follow the trends, follow the fads. We'll follow behaviors, we'll follow things and people. And I see this especially right now in our nation. And I see so many young people that are just following whatever's on Instagram the most. They're not really using their thinking processes. And this is an area that I will go on public record about, is defunding the police is something that I disagree with. And here's why. So again, we'll go back 25 years ago, right? 25 years ago, running a treatment center. I remember sitting in a room, and I had like 30 kids. I'm in the room by myself as a staff member. And one of the kids is standing there, and he goes, I wish we had anarchy. I wish we had anarchy right now. We need no law. We need anarchy. Anarchy is what, and he's like going on. He's just ranting, and I'm listening to him for a few minutes. And finally I looked at him and I said, so you truly believe that anarchy is the answer? He said, yes, governments are corrupt, people are corrupt, we need anarchy, where people can do whatever they want and go wherever they want. I said, you're good with that? Yes. Man. I'm like, okay. So if I walked up right now and just punched you in the face and knocked you out, you'd be good with that? No. Well, what would happen? Well, you'd probably go to jail. But that's not anarchy, son.
Right, not an anarchy world.
That's not anarchy. In an anarchy world, I can beat you senseless. And nobody can touch me. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. Really. And it's the same thing, this idea of defunding the police department. Well, if you defund something that provides structure, then the opposite of that is like, you don't want police. Okay, great. So then I can just walk into your house and take whatever I want. I can steal your car. I can take your food. I can take your purse. I can take your wallet and just knock you down and take it because I'm bigger and stronger and because I can. Because, yeah, you've got laws, but who are going to enforce those laws?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And this is a perfect example. I mean, it's that idea of, okay, we've got something that we don't like that's not really working. So let's just do the 180.
Do the 180.
Just like flip it as far, like defund the police, no law regulation, Whoa, hold your horses.
Slow down.
How about we go 45 degrees and find something that works a little bit better?
How about better training?
Yeah.
How about better recruitment?
More extensive
background
background
finding
checks.
people that aren't, that are healthier to be police?
Absolutely.
And that's where I agree.
Yes.
Because that's really what's happening, though. But then we get this big sweeping, F the police and defund the police and et cetera, and it's like, wait a minute. You're talking about a small percentage of these individuals that need to be weeded out. They need to be removed from their posts, and they need to be disciplined. Yes.
Right.
But there's a majority of them that are serving you and your community in a very powerful, healthy way. So you're right. It's that sweeping, that 180 reactionary.
Right.
And so I see a lot of young men and women basing their identity on what's trending.
Right.
They're going off of what's trending rather than what the truth is. And that's where one of the things that we've got to really challenge people with is you've got to start using common sense.
Yeah.
And you've got to stop reading everything, and you've got to stop believing everything that's put in front of you on the glass window. And you've got to stop staring out the glass window, and you've got to start looking in your community. You have to start looking at what's going on around you and making those decisions about who you are based upon the world you're in, not based upon the world of who people tell you should be.
Yes. And by the way, we have a whole podcast on this if you have not listened to that one about how to find what is true.
Right.
Yes.
And it's so, it is interesting.
Yeah, it's a big issue in our society today. I would completely agree. And I would also agree that our youth are most especially susceptible to it.
Right. And
because they're targeted.
They're targeted because what parents did was they put the kids' phone in the kids' hands because they wanted to shop at the grocery store in peace.
Right.
And because they wanted to drive in peace. And because they didn't want to have to deal with. And so you put this device in their hands that they have more of a relationship with than they have a relationship with their parents.
Yep.
And, when we take the kids into the treatment centers and we take their phones away from them, it was like you literally had murdered their best friend.
Yes, it is traumatic for them.
Very traumatic, because they have created an emotional connection to an object.
Yes.
And it's not just children. I'm seeing adults with the same issues.
Absolutely.
And so when we look at designing who we are, I kind of got off track there, but I do want to go back to this idea of not focusing on who we don't want to become. And that's another thing that I do see showing up in social media is the shaming, the social shaming and the social blaming and blowing people up on media that, not physically,
right,
but that's not good either. But, they're blowing people up and making it unpopular to use their voices, or to make it unpopular for them to speak up and use their, to say what they believe in. And we're shaming people. Like right now, the big shaming is Karen.
Yeah.
You've heard that, right?
It's straight up a Halloween costume this year, Dean.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a mask and the hairdo, the whole nine.
And it's super offensive.
It's super offensive.
But what's so funny to me about it is nobody that's using the term Karen recognizes how offensive it is. Because number one, you're degrading women.
Yep.
Number one, first and foremost. And I don't see any women pissed off about it. It's weird. Like, that's weirding me out. And then you're dehumanizing.
Right.
You're shaming.
Yes.
And you're calling other people Karens. And all of a sudden, what's happening is people don't want to be open. People don't want to be real. People don't want to open their voice, use their voice, because you shame them with these terms.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to be the opposite of a Karen. Tell me what a Karen is, and I will be the opposite of a Karen, because I've got to react and I've got to be the opposite of what that is. And so you see a lot of these people trying to not be a Karen, which is, to me, highly offensive.
Yeah.
And it's mind-blowing, the hypocrisy in it. Like the hypocrisy in like the idea of gender, and you're throwing a gender specific insult at people. What's happening here?
Right.
Like,
am I generally it happens when you're just trying to be a little bit assertive. Right.
To stand up and use your voice and say, hey.
And heaven forbid a woman try to be a little bit assertive.
Yeah, a woman especially.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got to shame that.
It's got to shame them.
Got
to shame them. We don't want to raise women up and go, yes, use your voice. However, let's find a different way, or let's dialogue more, or let's work this through. It's no, hey, you're a Karen.
Yeah.
Just put your mask on and stop being a Karen.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
I never even this is honestly just coming across my brain right now. I feel so sad for all the people that are legit named Karen.
Oh, I know.
Like, how many people have changed their name because of this new
I hope zero
term. I hope zero too, but that's a thing.
Oh yeah.
That would be a thing.
Yeah. And this social shaming, has no limits. And the funny part about it, and this is where I'm coming from with the viral trenders that follow the virals and follow the trends, one minute they're standing up about, how women are being oppressed and how it's very sexist and how, they need to shift that. And then the next minute they're putting a post on about Karen.
Right.
And it's like, well, what do you really believe?
Yeah.
Who are you? Mm-hmm. Are you a person that believes in women's rights and believes in raising up women? Or are you a person that believes in shaming to get your point? Mm-hmm. Whatever your opinion is, you can say whatever you want as long as it supports your opinion. Well, now you're right back where we were.
Yeah. we're just swinging on the vine.
Well, and that's the part that cracks me up is the people that are standing out protesting for Black lives need to be saying, hey, wait a minute, we're taking a left turn here. Those of you that are saying the Karen stuff need to stop too. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. You need to stop.
Right.
Because it's undermining the Black Lives Matters movement. Mm-hmm. But they don't see it.
Right. Oh, there's just so much noise right now. There's
so much
noise.
So then the fourth area then would be what?
Well, the one that hopefully is what we can all be working towards. Because once again, I do think that this is a basic social situation that we have going on, right? Which is to really stand in your place of personal power and figure out how it is that you want to navigate your life based on what it is that you want to create. I can't remember how eloquently you just put that snapshot in the beginning of that fourth way that we identify ourselves.
Being who you are based upon who, you created who you are based upon what you love, what's important to you, what's important to your truth, and what supports your truth. And that's not what I said earlier.
What is most authentically you? Coming from your solid place instead of grasping for all the other external influences that go on. And really, I think it's pretty, and I am an optimistic idealist. So this is coming from someone who believes in unicorns and sparkly things
you do.
and hope.
Yes, you do. As you've got your pink podcast mic stand
that I had to custom make because they didn't have the right shade of pink that I wanted to buy.
That's
remember?
Right. Yeah, rose gold.
And it matches my headphones too. But so coming from a really person of idealism and optimism, I think that and maybe this is a different hypothesis and maybe you can debunk me, Dean, but I think that it is nearly impossible to completely wipe out and erase all of the influences that come in. I think maybe, towards the later years of life when
where you're done,
when you're farting in public because you don't even give any more cares at all, right? That's when we get there. So ideally we can arrive closer and closer and closer, but there's so many of these pieces that are so ingrained and in there, right?
Yeah. And I would propose that you don't want to.
I would agree.
Yeah.
But I can just hear, I'm okay, great. How do we wipe that slate clean? How do we
that's reactionary too.
Exactly. How do we completely just get to the place where I'm operating from my authentic self, right?
Yeah. Because and I'm going to jump in and interrupt you, but really we do need some of that external stimulus because that's where perspective comes from. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to shut it all off and say, don't be influenced by everything that's coming at you. No, you need to let everything that's coming at you wash over you and ask yourself, what part of me is attracted to this? What part of me is turned off by this? What part of me is this?
Right. And why?
And why is this a part of me?
Right.
And then use that as perspective, because I do see other people that can get into that space where I don't give a rip what other people think.
Absolutely.
And that category still fits in the first three, just in a different way. But it's not a matter of, I don't care what other people think about me, or I don't care what other people think. That's just not healthy either.
Right.
But it's that, what is it that is important or of value to me? And as the information comes at you, you look at the information and you say, well, what applies to me? And hang on to what applies. And what doesn't apply, you've got to let it move through you and move past you. And that's, I think, a part of that equation is the perspective in really creating who you are, because there's a lot of things that are going on now that 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and I can say 20 years ago, a lot of the information that we have access to and that you and I are sharing today, we did not have access to when I started my career.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I'm still being shaped by a lot of these things. A lot of these things are still shaping who I am. Mm-hmm. And so I do want to somehow be influenced, but not lost in by the first three. I don't want to do it based upon who I think I should be or people tell me I should be or who I shouldn't and don't want to be and
reactive.
I want to be looking at it and go, you know what, that feels true to me.
Right, yes.
I want to step into that space. I want to be a part of that. And I think one of the steps and one of the pieces, and I don't want to, I'm going to put it out there, but if you don't want to move on yet, then we'll loop back to it. But one of the other pieces to it that I think is important is owning your idiosyncrasies. Like, we're in a world right now where people don't want to own their idiosyncrasies, because the minute you say something about it, you get bashed, you get shamed, you get dehumanized. But to stand up and go, yeah, there's a little racist in me, and I'm on some level I'm a little racist, and be honest with it and go, yeah, I've got some work to do.
Yeah.
And one of my dearest friends, she had such an authentic moment with me the other day. We were in a conversation, really just neck deep in it, and we were both passionate about our views, which were 98% the same. But there was that, small percentage, 2% that we disagreed. And the one thing that I loved was she had a conversation with her daughter about some things, and she was telling me how she left the conversation and was driving home and got to thinking about it and went back and called her daughter up and goes, you know what, I'm sorry. I thought this was a good thing, but in a lot of ways, I was just adding to the problem. And to me, that is part of the process, is owning your shit.
Oh, gosh, it's so... like, you say that, and I'm just like, yes! Like, there's so many amazing things that happened in that moment.
Right.
Of her, A, owning her own stuff, B, verbalizing it to her daughter, so now the impact that had on her daughter and the way that she's able to say, hey, you know what? Actually, I messed up. Right?
Yeah.
And this is, let's talk about this. Like, wow, that's so cool.
Own your shit, people. That's the thing. And we're in a world where people, if you own your shit, people will just murder you over. People will just crucify you on the internet. People will, talk, and it's, so nobody wants to be honest. But that's part of you got to just do it anyway. Right. You got to be honest, but also you got to be careful who you're honest in front of.
Yes,
there are certain people, and I loved, this idea, quoting, Jesus Christ, actually, and he said, don't cast your pearls before swine.
Right.
And what he was saying is, don't take those things that are personal of nature and just put them out in public for everybody to see.
Yeah.
But the people around you, to be able to call your daughter and go, you know what? I missed that.
Yeah.
That was a miss on my part. I own my shit. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of really becoming yourself, is not being afraid to be yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And looking at, and even to yourself, right? Like, we're talking about how powerful this can be for other people. And I love that you brought up that concept of, for me, maybe I even got this from you like 2 years ago, I think, when I was really wrestling with some stuff as far as dating was concerned. I think you told me something along the lines of, not everyone has access to my information, right? Like, I don't have to share all my stuff with everybody, right? That comes through layers of connection and more intimacy with different relationships and stuff like that, right? So yes, I would agree. You do not have to just be the most bold social media person and just blast all your shit across to all of the world. Like, no, that's not what we're saying. But please, I love that you're saying do that with those that you love, but also, most importantly, do that with you, right? Like, I'm just sitting here thinking about, like, the statement that you made of, like, I don't want to be like my mother, right? And then to flip that into, wait, but these are the things that I do like about my mother, or the way she mothered me, or just her personality traits that are showing up in me, right? And so being able to look at that and say, okay, is that mine? Is that innately me? Okay, great. Do I want to keep that? because we're that powerful, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I totally want to keep a lot of the pieces that I got from my mom. And then, of course, some of the things I don't necessarily want to keep, and that's okay.
Right.
But I also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, you can't just, it's that 180 idea. Like, you don't just like eradicate the whole thing. Like, to be able to say, okay, wow, I've got some of these things in my personality and in my behaviors that keep creeping in. And I don't really like that. I don't really feel like that's very true to me.
Yeah.
First of all, why do I do them? Maybe where did they come from, right? So then you can start to heal it, but then you can also start to make different choices and operate from a different place of, okay, great. What do I want to create? What kind of a person do I want to be? And I love that we brought up, and make sure it's not reactionary.
Right.
That it's not coming from a place of, because I don't want to be like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, so it kind of, as we're pulling it all together and kind of, getting close to the end here, it really kind of behooves us to really sit down and to be introspective and to get quiet and to really start to understand who I am and do I like who I am. And one of the things that's important is that every day that we look in the mirror, we like what we see looking back. And not because somebody told you look pretty, not because you don't look like someone, not because you look like someone, but you look in your eyes and you see the light and you see the love and you see the joy and you see the openness and you see the kindness, and you really start to embrace who's standing in front of you. And if that's not there, then you need to look at that, and you need to step back and try to understand who you are. And that's what I think, listeners, you need to understand is you will never stop wrestling your demons.
Yeah.
You won't. I'm sorry. This has been a mission quest for me for the past 31 years now. And I will tell you, getting into the treatment industry and getting into the mental health industry saved my life in a lot of ways, because I came into the industry trying to make a difference in people's lives. And that was my number one goal and mission. But what I will tell you is they've made more of a difference in my life, and my life has been more impacted by that and the work than I could probably have ever impacted those around me. And what I found was a person inside of me, and I found a person deep down inside of me that I didn't realize was there. But once I was able to start understanding why I was the way I was, understanding the wounds and the hurts and the pains, the dysfunction, the abuse, and going through all of those things and working to heal them and heal them and heal them, and then to start to rebuild, and to start to rebuild who I thought I wanted to be instead of who I really am, and started making these mistakes. And that's where I'm coming from with all of it, is I made the mistakes. And now I'm sitting here at 55 years old, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm liking who I see looking back at me, but I still have my demons. I still have my weaknesses. I still have my idiosyncrasies. I still have my fears and my insecurities, just like everybody else. The difference is, in my mind, it's you're never going to get to a place where it's all perfect. So stop trying to get to a place where it's all perfect. But get to a place where you have the rescue tools.
Yeah.
Get to the place where, you've built yourself the nice big giant cruise liner. And you started out in a rowboat or a canoe. And slowly you've built this big old giant Royal Caribbean water slide on the roof.
Ice cream at 4 o'clock.
Jacuzzi on the back, ice cream pizza all night long, all of the things, all the amenities, and you finally have built it to where you want it built. But now the important part is that you walk around that entire ship on every floor, on every corridor, and you put a life preserver in. And you put an escape hatch in. And you put the tools in to help you, so that when you get lost, if you fall overboard, if you get off track, that you've got the safety equipment in. And that's really what life is about, is if you really want to build the life you want to build it, but put the tools around you to help pull you out of those spirals.
Yeah, those moments that the demons come to wrestle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care if you're the Dalai Lama. I don't care if you're the prophet of some religion or the Pope himself. You're going to wrestle with your demons.
Yeah.
The end.
So being able to have all of those coping skills just ready to roll.
Right.
Yep. So you spend less time wrestling.
And more time playing shuttleboard on deck.
Shuttleboard. Perfect, old timer.
Old timer. Well, I was on one boat that had like a putt-putt course up top.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
It was cool.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, we love you guys. As always, thank you so much for listening. We love all of your interaction and your comments. And
thank you for sharing and liking our podcast.
Yes, we really, really appreciate it. We like to call it Share the Love. Help us help as many people as we can. And yeah, like wrapping up this one, I think that was the perfect ending, Dean, to be like, get building your cruise liner, but put in those safety places as well. Absolutely. And we will hopefully catch you next time on the podcast.
Hopefully, for sure we will.